I'd like to go ahead and open and adjourn, not adjourn, to start July 8th, 2025 Littleton Conservation Commission. And so what we'd like to do, we have a proposed agenda to see if anyone has any additions to administrative discussions. Tim, you first?
Yeah, I've got one talking about overflow parking for the Appleman Triathlon at YAP.
Okay. So we will come back to that. So what I'd like to do is we're going to just jump right into minutes. And so thank you for sending along. Let's start with June 10th, 2025 for conservation. Does anyone have any amendments or corrections or input on that? If we do not, do I have a motion for someone to accept as written?
Carl Melberg, accept as written.
Sarah Seward, second. And then Carl, thank you. Will you do roll call for us?
I will. Kyle Maxfield.
Maxfield, aye.
Sarah Seward.
Yep. Sarah Seward, aye.
Carl Melberg. Aye. Michael Livingston.
Michael Livingston, aye.
Okay, great. So thank you. Let's move on to June 24th, 2025, the draft minutes for those. Does anyone have any corrections or input on those? If we do not, would someone like to make a motion to accept?
I'll make a motion
to accept those notes as written.
Okay, so we have Michael, and then do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, super. Roll call, Carl?
Kyle.
Kyle Maxfield, aye.
Sarah Seward.
Sarah Seward, aye.
Michael Livingston.
Michael Livingston, aye.
Carl Melberg, aye.
Okay, great. All right, so what I'd like to do is move into administrative discussions, and we recognize we have some lengthy discussions a little bit later on that are posted starting at 7:45. So we will start on administrative discussions, but we will put those on hold in order to stay hopefully on time with our posted hearings. So first, we're going to talk about the enforcement order ratification and discussion of Zero Fort Pond, DEP number 204-0988. Tim, I'd like to go ahead and start with you with your overview of what brought this forth.
Sure.
And show photos, that would be great.
Yep, I'm going to share my screen here real quick. So we got notification that there was heavy machinery down by the bank of Fort Pond, and I went out there to Zero Fort Pond, where we have an active project with an order of conditions, and in the approved order, it notes that the vegetation along a 5-foot wide wood chip path is going to be cut to the ground level, and wood chips are going to be placed on the ground. And so when I went out there, I noticed that there had been some decent excavation, and that a lot of the roots had been damaged in the process. And so I've got some pictures here that I'm going to show you. And so after going out to the site, drafted up an enforcement order and issued that. And we have Steve Marsh here, who will speak to this after we vote on the ratification.
And then, Tim, please share with the commission. So another commissioner went out. Was it Andrew that went out?
Andrew reviewed the pictures that I had taken.
Okay. Okay, great.
Who signed off on the enforcement order.
Yeah, okay, great. So what I'd like to do is to open up discussions for the commissioners, and then Mr. Marsh, I see you're here. What we'd like to do is to get some input and then vote to ratify or not ratify. So commissioners, do you have questions for Tim? Tim, thank you for sending along the photographs prior to the meeting as well.
Sure.
Yeah, Tim, can you clarify the order again real quick? I don't recall there being any excavation work. My understanding was that the wood chip path was going to be placed directly on the ground surface.
Right. Yeah. So what was proposed and approved was that the vegetation along the 5 foot wide path was going to be cut to the ground level, and that the wood chips were going to be placed
Okay.
on the ground.
All right, I'm quick
And
picture.
so the width of this is about 10 to 12 feet, depending on where you are in the path. And obviously, there's been some excavation.
Yeah, right. Below vegetation. Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Anything else that's significant, Tim, in the order of conditions that was approved?
Let me remember. I did know. I mean, it wasn't in an order of conditions, but it was in the documentation that was submitted to the record during the permitting process. There wasn't going to be any heavy machinery within the 50-foot buffer. So this measuring tape that you see here, this is 50 feet
Okay.
from the bank. It's difficult to say. So there were some trees that were removed. 3 trees were permitted to be removed as part of the order. It looks like some maybe trees that didn't quite meet the 6-inch DBH and above had been moved, but that wouldn't necessarily violate the order.
Okay. Any other questions, commissioners?
Yeah, Tim, with all this disturbance now, I don't recall really having an erosion control discussion either. Is there any sort of erosion controls in place?
Yep. So Steve Marsh was quick to get erosion controls out there. So they're in between the edge of the disturbance and the bank.
Edge of disturbance bank. Okay. All right, and then I guess one last. You mentioned Steve Marsh again. Was Steve Marsh? Is he working for the applicant, or was this Steve? We need
Yes.
like a third party. Oh, he's for the applicant.
Yep.
Okay.
David Harrington is the applicant.
Okay. Anyone
Thank
else have any other questions? So, Steve, I see that you're here. Would you like to introduce yourself to the commission and to the public?
Sure. Steve Marsh. I am the contractor hired by the Harringtons to install a dock, a deck, a boathouse, and a path to the boathouse from the dock. I did go out there and I tried to get on to the commission to discuss moving the boathouse further outside a couple of weeks or a few weeks ago or a month ago to discuss this because I didn't want to cut any of these trees that are along the edge. So I did not cut any trees or remove any trees that were within the 100-foot buffer. So none of those trees that are up there, the 100-foot buffer marker is pretty much where where I was going to put the boathouse. And what I did in the meantime, there were big boulders that were in this path area. And what we did is, if you look, I had submitted some pictures after I put up the erosion control. I had my surveyor go out and stake the 5-foot. If you look on the pictures that Tim had presented, you'll see that there's a discoloration in the soil. And that's the 5-foot path that we went down. I did discuss this with an arborist, if this was going to be an impact to the trees. I did submit an impact report from an arborist today. I don't know if you guys have that. And I did submit pictures as well. The people want to use this, and they were worried about being able to drag their boats down safely. We did not cut any trees, so we're not cutting any trees that were in the buffer or within the 100-foot. And I know that Tim had been out on one other, somebody had called to complain about us putting the dock in. So I know we had started some of the work. I waited a bit and then was trying to get all of my material, including the wood chips are on site. We're ready to go to do this. So I did review the notice of intent, and I didn't see anything in there with reference to the machines. But we have a way to correct this. And I did discuss it with the arborist and my wetlands people that if we can get material in there sooner rather than later, I have to trim up the roots, cut them off. If you look on his report, and I did have a meeting with him out there today, and he said that we should be able to salvage those trees. There is one dead one or one that's dying with the fungal activity that's in it. but we could rectify it in short order, and I could be in and out of there in short order as well. With regards, I probably have 3 to 4 days worth of work there.
Okay, so I guess in question is also the use of excavator or backhoe, whatever was in there.
It's not in the order.
Tim?
I'll take a look at the hold on, give me a second. I think it might have been noted.
I believe it was stated that the trees or such were going to be cut flush and that the wood chips were going to go on top, correct?
Yes. So it wasn't in, it may not have been in the order. I can't say for sure if it was or not. I don't have it in front of me. But it was in the documentation that was uploaded to the record that you can see here, no motorized vehicles will be used within the 50-foot buffer zone.
Sure.
And then any vegetation that's just along the bank.
Okay. Commissioners, questions for Mr. Marsh? You will see that was sent in regards to Daniel Hager out of Concord and Arborist. His comments with the trees and the diameters and such.
If I may just add, he said that he would come and take a look to make sure that we trim the roots properly before we backfill them. But he did stress the importance of doing it sooner rather than later. We did not cut any trees, so there were no tree cuttings there through that. Like I said, we meandered in between those trees to try to save them.
Sure. Well, our concern isn't that you didn't cut trees; it's that it was it's a complete deviation from what we were presented in the first place.
Sure.
I mean, right. So I can understand that you didn't cut any trees. My understanding is you've cut up to 40 to 50% of the root bulb of some of these trees, though, right? So that's fine. I understand arborist is saying they will survive 3 years. What happens after 3 years?
Well, here's what I can offer to the commission. We can get it. I can contract with Hartney Graymont to monitor these for 3 years. If in fact that any of them do die, I will replant, and I did discuss this with them, something in order to meet or exceed the caliber total cumulative of any trees that die, that don't survive beyond the 3 years.
So I guess I have a quick question. You stated that this was done in order to remove the boulders. How many boulders were removed? Where were they put? And I know when I move boulders, I don't go that far down into the ground and make a swath.
Right. Yeah, there were a lot of rocks that were, if you walk down through there, anywhere down there, and I walk that frequently, there are a lot of rocks. They're not huge boulders, but they're rocks, and they're trip hazard. There's also building code that I have to contend with as well. I mean, as far as making it a safe walkway. With regard, I don't think that my intent was not to do anything that would be detrimental, and we did not work down near the bank. I mean, we're beyond the bank. We protected that area.
Are we within 50 feet of the water?
Oh yeah, no, you're definitely within 50 feet of the water for sure.
So I don't think a waiver would have been, well, I don't know. I can't speak for the commission, but I'm unsure if a waiver would have been allowed for this in terms of making that path. So, commissioners, any other questions you have for Mr. Marsh? So on the table right now would be if you would like to ratify the enforcement order or not.
I think we need to ratify the enforcement order.
Okay, if that's your feeling, would you like to make a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to ratify the enforcement order. Is there a
2040988?
Do we have a second?
Second.
I'll second.
Okay. If we can go ahead and do a roll call vote.
Kyle Maxfield,
Kyle Maxfield, aye.
Sarah Seward,
Sarah Seward, aye.
Michael Livingston,
Michael Livingston, aye.
Carl Melberg, aye.
So, Mr. Marsh, what we would have to do now is to set up a site walk for the commissioners and come up with next steps in terms of kind of rehabilitating that area, and also seeing to what extent you work with your arborist as well. Tim, would you like to do that now, or what is your choice to do so?
I mean, just the site walk or discussions?
Both.
If you guys want to discuss now, and then we can either set up a site walk at the end of the discussion, or I can set that up back at the office.
Okay.
Yeah, so I know, just not to jump in, but I know you're looking to set up a sidewalk. We're expecting to get a fair amount of rain this week, right? I heard at least 1 to 2 inches. Do we really want to leave this open if he has wood chips on site already? And if he puts them in, we decide that's not the right answer, then he has to take them out. I'd rather that be stabilized this week if we're not able to get out there. You know, we're clearly not gonna have another meeting for another 2 weeks to talk about this. I don't want that sitting now that he's excavated that out. I mean, I get that he shouldn't have, but he needs to be stabilized, in my opinion. 50
Is
feet
there
from the
any
bank.
erosion control that's already been put down?
Yeah, there is. And I can it would take me a minute to go find the photos that Steve provided me, but let me share my screen. I can kind of show you on my pictures where they are.
So Kyle, what are your thoughts? Kind of, how do you going to access to get the lower chips down?
I would say however they originally proposed, right? I mean,
Right.
These chips were supposed to be installed somehow without equipment in the 50.
How deep is that hole?
Man, that looks like it's a foot deep.
It's got to be like maybe 1 to 2.
It is. It's about one. It's top and subsoil. It's in between a foot and 18 inches.
So there is erosion controls, like not pictured in this, but right now they exist along this the back line here.
All right, are those wattles or is it silt fencing?
They are
Wattles.
wattles.
I guess the good thing with this picture is, and I didn't see it in any other ones, is that it's more of a pit than it is. If water were to go into this, it's not going to flow down into the river or into the pond. Sorry.
I would be happy to meet with Tim or any rep from the commission and get this stabilized. At least maybe not do the wood chips, but let me at least get the parent material back. It's the same material that came out of there. I can trim back I'll call the arborist and talk to him about trimming back the roots and just getting the material in, and I can wait to put the wood chips down. So in the event that you decide that I wouldn't expect you to tell me to put the boulders back.
So I guess it really boils down to the commission's comfort level of the arborist, and if another opinion is, because we're looking at not a lot of those trees potentially surviving, if cutting them back is the best method to go forward. Commissioners,
Well, here's the other option. I could just fill it back up with the material that I pulled out, and then bring some additional material in if I need to supplement it, and just get it covered up.
well, I think, but as your arborist has stated, in order to have some success, those roots have to be manually cut back.
This guy has all the designations. I vetted him pretty well. He wasn't the only arborist I spoke with, and I felt most comfortable with him. And I would like to follow his lead on that. I apologize but like I said, I did read through it. I thought this was the best course of action for a safe walkway and not having to cut any trees within the buffer. The stuff that was growing there is, you can see it. It's adjacent to the entire project. It's just
right. So what was permitted was a 5-foot path, and the width now is between 10 and 12 and more.
No, I think it's 10 and 12 and less, actually. But
okay, so that's something I think the commission is going to want, is to know basically the dimensions of this path, because more than likely it's going to be tightened up so that there would never be able to have, I think one note was about no motorized vehicles on the path. Was that?
I can put boulders along the side.
Right.
Make sure
and that's something that we would have to discuss with the commission to see if that's what they want you to do going forward. But Kyle does bring up a good point that we do need to have you further stabilize what's there.
I agree. It makes sense.
Did-
And I'm prepared to do it. I can start tomorrow.
Carl, go ahead.
Did we permit this path within the 50 going down to the?
Yeah, it was just supposed to be wood chips, 5 foot wide
That was
path of wood
supposed to
chips.
be a
So
very
just-
light touch.
So basically, just a light touch, like not cutting anything.
Yeah, just
I
the
didn't-
vegetation, just
Just,
Cutting
that's
back.
basically what I did is I removed the vegetation. You can see it on the picture. And I removed the top and subsoil. I didn't remove it from the site. It's stockpiled because it was intended to go
Right,
back.
but removal of topsoil and
Yes,
subsoil was not part of the,
equipment had gone down to do this. Obviously.
Exactly. No, I used a backhoe to do it.
Yeah. Yeah,
So my interpretation of that notice of intent when it said vehicles was for them bringing down or dragging down a boat on the back of a four-wheeler or something like that. So that's my mistake, and I'm willing to own it. But regardless, though, it really should be stabilized. I really should be putting the material in there and cutting those back. If the commission elects to make me do something different after the fact, that's fine. But the material should be put back. It just makes sense.
I think I'm perplexed here because I don't want to put something in and then have to take it back out in order to have the success of these trees. And obviously I'm not an arborist.
Well, the trees will be successful at some point because I'm willing to plant other trees.
The same diameter as the ones that are potentially.
Well, I wouldn't put the same diameter, but I would do a number of them to equal the diameter.
Okay.
So if I have a 10-inch tree, I could do 2 5-inch. Red maples or whatever was growing there.
All right, commissioners, what would you like to do here?
It's tough. It's a tough call. I agree with you, Sarah, that you want to have the most success with these trees growing, and whether that's putting soil that's already been dug up back in there. I mean, who knows if you're going to be putting the organics back in on top, or, it's just going to be a mix now.
Yeah, I mean, that's what you just said. I expect, hopefully, that those materials are segregated well enough, right? So that the subsoil goes back in, and then put the topsoil back in, and then only a 5 foot wide path of chips, and somehow get vegetation on the outside, the outer 2.5 feet will be on either side of that path, right?
I would filling it
But what
back
if it goes in the wrong order? In terms of soils, are you compromising the trees more?
I think so, because you're putting mineral soil where organic should be, and that's what the roots depend on.
Right.
I mean, that's my 2 cents. There's no way that those
We dug
soils-
out just the organic, there's a pile of organic material. We did not get down into the third layer. We barely brushed as soon as and you can see it in the pictures.
So you only remove topsoil.
I'll do whatever the commission desires, but I think just from a common sense point of view, we really should be I should be putting back in the parent material that was there. That's the discussion I have with my wetlands people as well as the arborist for those trees to succeed.
Is that going to stand up to the rains that are coming soon? Will that be stable?
Well, I can compact.
Or is it just going to run down?
I can keep it slightly below. As you said, it's kind of a pit. I could keep it a few inches below. We do have silt fence and wattles there for protection.
So I think initially I would encourage to have both reinforcements of the silt fencing and the wattles, because we don't know what we're getting for rains. And then obviously we can't stockpile within 100 feet of the lake as well. So I'm not sure where the stockpiles are presently.
Yeah, they're about 75 feet.
Okay.
But I'll move them. Or I'll put wattles, I'll put hay bales or something around them.
Well, those,
It's small. They're not.
if they're
it's
not going to
that
be
big.
used, they have to be taken off site. So,
Okay.
And Sarah,
I can move them up 30 feet.
yep.
I don't feel comfortable, Sarah, with just filling it in.
You do or you do not?
Do not.
Okay. Steve, what you mentioned wetland scientists, who are you using?
Goddard, same
And
people. I spoke with.
Have they gone out to look at what's going on?
No, they have not. I did show them pictures.
Okay. I think that foremost, your wetlands scientist needs to be very involved.
Okay, in what capacity? As far as what do you want it?
Well, in terms of any of this vegetation that's been altered and what's going back in as well. All right, commissioners, what would we like to do?
I think you just put some, you just need to get some erosion controls, you know, at the end of the path, something so we're not getting flow going down towards the pond. I don't think we should fill it back in because.
So you could.
What's the next step for you then, Carl? How does this go? How do we go forward?
Well, I think we have to wait until we actually see it and get the wetland scientist hasn't even been out there yet. He's looked at pics. So he's making, you know,
These aren't wetland plants, Carl. These are, these are upland invasives that are growing there.
It doesn't matter. I'm more concerned about the trees. I'm more concerned about losing the trees.
Okay. Michael, Kyle?
I've given my opinion.
So what we could do is you can channel break with the wattles. So you can take the whole line and line it on both sides from 100 feet right down to the lake. And then you can also kind of cross section off.
On the inside, I'll do that.
On the inside. So you would have a perimeter very close on the bank on both sides, and shut it off at the lake. And then also cross section it off. Tim, how far are we talking? How long is the path that's cut right now?
Maybe about 70 feet, I would say, 75.
Okay.
Let's see. Can't remember. I believe I only measured out and photographed the 50 foot, which is what you guys saw.
So Steve, I think you're hearing our concern that this is a difficult situation because we want to stabilize it.
Yeah.
We also don't want to deter this, make it worse already. My suggestion would be to do the perimeter cross section going through probably every 10 to 15 feet so that if one breaches, it gets to the next one, but that you've got your wattles and then there's a gap between your siltation fencing. So you're having different parameters. And in the meantime, I would ask Goddard to go straight out. And the commissioners, what are your thoughts on following the advice of the arborist to have them straight away and address the roots? So once that's done, it could get filled or compacted. You're looking at a total of hopefully just a couple days.
That makes sense. I mean, that's going to have to get done regardless at this point, right? They're going to have to do some sort of maintenance on those roots. So
the expectation from what I'm hearing is that the erosion control would be in tomorrow, and with the hopes that within how many days you all suggest, the Goddard would be out, and also the arborist, you would give permission to go ahead and follow the arborist's suggestions as stated and submitted today.
Sounds like it makes sense.
Okay.
Hey, so I'm recalling this when we first had this discussion years ago on this one. This has got to be 2 to 3 years ago.
Yeah, a year now.
Yeah, I distinctly remember telling the applicant that it had to be, and I think what the applicant wanted was a way to carry down a kayak from where he was going to be parking. Right. And then part of the other discussion was we were concerned about once they get down there, they would maybe start putting the kayaks on the shoreline.
So I think,
I remember that discussion
okay.
as part of this too, and they said they would keep. So there was yeah, it was. We made it very clear.
Okay. And so, Steve, what you may want to look at is what the ultimate path is going to look like. So you're going to have 5 feet, and it's probably not going to be a straight shot. It may have to meander a little bit, and how you're going to basically create a perimeter with that, and how you're going to vegetate on the other side of, say you line it with rocks going through. What are you going to do with the next kind of 3 to 5 feet on either side of that as well? So I think that would have to be surveyed.
Are you looking for plantings then? Would you?
I think it depends on the tree cover. So some things might not live, but
Right.
you also have to be able to stabilize and try and have something grow in that soil there as well. But
Why
so
don't
I
I
think
do
you would
this? I'll
have to
have
come up with a
I'll have the wetlands
design
person
of what?
give me something. I'll have the wetlands person
Yep.
give me some ideas to present to the commission.
Okay. So, commissioners, it sounds like we would give him permission to go ahead, call in the arborist, additional siltation fencing straight away, and connect with Goddard, and to keep Tim abreast of this. And tonight we'll set up a site visit for whenever we can.
Okay.
Sounds about right.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Tim, anything else?
Nope, I think that's it.
Okay.
I'll
Steve,
call Tim after all the silt fences in tomorrow. And then you
correct.
can
Yep. And if he can't make it, I'm sure there's a commissioner that can go over as well. But we do ask that you be diligent on that, especially if rains are coming in.
Understood.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. It is now 8 o'clock and we're not on time. So those of you that are here for administrative discussions, we will be starting our order of go for 7:45 with our continued public hearings, and ask you for your patience. So 7:45 continued public hearing, notice of intent, 76 Hartwell Ave, DEP number 204-1021, expansion of a garage and widening of a driveway. Who's here to speak to this? Bruce, I see you're here.
Sorry, takes a couple seconds here to, once the web lets me in.
Yep, and you can share your screen as
Good
well.
evening.
Yep. Feel free to share your
Now
screen.
you're all froze. Hello?
No, you're the one. You're the one that's frozen, not us.
Hello?
Oh, Bruce.
Hello?
We can still hear you, Bruce.
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yep, you're unfrozen. Yep. So,
I
Bruce,
don't
if
know
you
what
want to,
happened.
if you want to share your screen,
I would love to.
okay. Thank you.
Okay. At our last meeting, we basically went over the proposed addition across the front of the garage and off the side of the garage here, moving the portion of this which is already impervious surface out with pavement and moving this little retaining wall out a little bit, continuing the walkway that comes through the existing retaining wall. Would do the same here, and then step on down along the side and return back into the existing wall upgradient of the 50-foot zone. What I had pointed out at the last meeting was that there is an existing infiltration chamber underneath the walkway, catching the roof, and we have added in a new infiltration chamber here, and we've added details. Hang on here, if this will slide over appropriately. We added details for that infiltration chamber to the plan for that. modified the erosion control as such to work around that area. And that's picking up the roof drains from the new roof and the existing roof, coming in and going into a chamber here. This is all good sandy soil. We have a pop-up emitter in the center of it that will allow for any overflow if there's severe heavy rains that overload that and the capacity of the soil to infiltrate it into the ground. That was what I talked about on the site walk that we would be adding, and we have added that to the plan. You're muted, Sarah.
So, quick question for my own knowledge, when you mention adding more capacity to that, how much more capacity does that add? And can you correlate that with inches of rain, or how is that correlated?
Yeah, we've taken a look at the roof area here that's coming into it. I don't know where my mouse went here. Let's see if I can get it back. We've taken a look at the roof area here, and we've looked at a basic inch of rain over it. And we have more than enough capacity for that. Plus, as I mentioned, it's very sandy gravel soils, so it shouldn't be a problem. Right now, I don't know what's there. It's a small leaching facility under the ground. They don't have a recollection of what it was, and they may not even know because it may have been put in before they got there. I don't know.
Okay. Commissioners?
I mean, I put that chamber in for much bigger homes for a roof area, so it's more than adequate.
Okay. Questions for Bruce, commissioners?
Looks fine. Looks fine to me. Bruce, did you ever find out where that paved road goes to?
Yes. So let's see if I can get this to move here. When we were out on the site, there's this area right here that is paved. I have some photos as well. This is their fence in backyard. And this area is paved right up in here. And there's a small pit right here that the homeowners have been using for composting. Prior to them buying it, their predecessors had this opening in the wall, and they had been just kind of throwing debris off into the woods. The current owners had been coming up in here when they mow their lawn and their leaves collection and stockpiling it up here. They had stone there for a while, and the stone got all over the yard and the tractor was getting stuck in it and ruts, and was getting mud and stuff coming down. They went to a paving contractor, asked if this could be done. Contractor said yes. Mind you, these folks do not understand wetlands or know about wetlands. It wasn't until they were talking with their designer, their architect, and their architect said, "Hey, you've got some wetlands back here." And they said, "Okay, do what we do." As he's pointed out to me, everything that they've done here, they've done, with hiring somebody to get the necessary permits and provide the work. As I pointed out to those folks who were on the site, and it shows here on the plan, there is a underdrain underneath this area here. The discharge is right here. This yard and several yards to the plan north of here have fully filled backyards and have some sort of underdrain. The Nathansons have set up rock where all this stopped and this drain stopped, and have set that rock in there and have graded the yard, had the yard graded so any surface water came into this area. There's wetlands associated with it here. As you go down the site, beyond one more lot, there's a vacant lot. Beyond that, the land is, again, piped, I assume, because there's a beautiful back lawn that you can see on aerials. Then there's another yard where it's possibly piped, possibly not, and then another yard where it's clearly, all been filled back in. This is an area right at the base of the hill going up in the back. I don't think anybody in the area has ever really thought of it as a wetland area, more of a runoff swale. And now that they have isolated that area and kept things out of it and put a fence around the edge, there are wetland plants that are growing right here. They bring out their, the gentleman, the owners have I forget what he calls it, but he has some machine that when he mows his lawn and or leaves, it dices it up into real small stuff. He has a small pit here. He and his wife use the compost around the yard. Those of you that were on the site, the property is well landscaped, and whenever they plant or are doing work around it, they use the compost from the pit there, and they use it around the yard. If you will allow me to show you a few photos, I have direct photos of the thing here. You're going to have to tell me, does that change, or is that still the picture of the plan?
Still the plan.
Still the plan.
Okay, hang on 1 second. I'll have to stop and share again. Hopefully the photos will allow me to go from one to another, but we'll find out. Okay, this is from outside of the fence. This is this little paved apron. I have another picture that shows, a couple more pictures that show it. And right here is a little pit that he's dug where he does his composting in. And as you can see, everything around the outsides of this compost are growing, very strong. It's not a heavy layer of compost that's occurring in there. And I'm not sure I'm going to be able to get to another picture here. Did that change photos?
Nope.
Still the same one?
Yep.
All right, I'm sorry. I'm going to have to stop and start through this. Webinars don't like to allow that to happen. I don't have an answer. Okay, this is the edge of the pit right here. And as you can see, all the understory is growing really well right around it. I'm going to continue to stop and click and move right at it here. And have so many pictures open, I'm going to hit the wrong one. Immediately, again, right off the edge, you can see here's where this grass is composting right here. Everything right around it, the whole understory is all growing well. I'm going to have multiple pictures of this. I guess what I'm trying to get at is what you're looking at is his backyard up to the hill. When we were there, you could see the red markers from the two rear corners when we staked it. There's no part of this property that's outside of the 100-foot buffer. The property is such that when he bought it, there was a compost area. He's cleaned it up to a very small area. He's tried to make it so that it doesn't get dug up and create any erosion. And he's got a small area where he composts and uses the compost on the yard. And all the vegetation around that immediate small area is still growing and growing with good understory.
So quick question from a procedural standpoint, you're looking to have this compost area noted on the plan. How many square feet approximately is it?
That's a really good question. Let me go back to the plan. Take a quick gander here. To be quite honest, I didn't even know it was there until when we did our site walk. So let me see, bring the plan back up.
So what comes to mind is that in the order of conditions, we would note that composting in whatever that square footage area is, and also remind that no structures can be added.
So Sarah, are we going to try and permit this?
Well, that's what I'm asking.
This paved access road to make it to make everything clean?
That's what I'm asking.
I think we should, since we didn't know about it and now we know about it. And
trying to get you an area here. Bear with me a moment.
Commissioners, while Bruce is finding that, questions that come up with this?
Guys, I'm gonna go to, I'm gonna stop sharing and I'm gonna go to a plan, hard copy with a scale, because that's taking too much time.
So commissioners, thoughts on this?
I wasn't on the sidewalk. Did anything else come out of the sidewalk of note, or did mines get eased? I haven't heard any details from how the sidewalk went.
Carl, Tim?
Of that, everything that we saw on the sidewalk looked nice and orderly.
Okay.
For
Michael,
lack of a better word.
Did you see the composting area, Michael?
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
I'd say we're roughly 300 square feet. It's about 20 foot long of pavement in the woods behind the wall, plus another 10 feet, being generous for the pit. I think the pit's less than that. And then another 10 feet down below. So about 350 square feet.
And they had the existing stoned or gravelled access way prior to paving. So it had already, all that material had already been there. So
That's
basically we're looking at just permitting the paved access way.
So Bruce, where you did not, it doesn't sound like you knew about it either, would you amend this, or what would you do? Because we'd want to call it out and you'd have to have some type of dimensional and located on the plan.
I can add dimensions to the plan and add a quick little letter to be added to the file relative to the narrative, to address it and spell it out, give you actual dimensions.
Okay.
And could have it at the next meeting if that works for you.
Yeah, I think that's fine. I mean, you could tell, I mean, there was nothing went into the wetland. It was just staying on top of the existing access way. So I'm good with that, Bruce.
Bruce, would there be a way to memorialize that area just with, if they have a couple rocks or something? I guess what we want to think of is the next person, if there's another owner of the house, that the compost doesn't then create a life of its own.
There is several big rocks and a big tree right around it right now. There's a large rock left and right, a very large tree right dead center in the back, and a large rock behind it to the right. I'll provide you photos that show that with the letter.
Could you locate that on the plan when you revise it?
Yeah, I could put it on the plan, rough location, definitely.
Okay. So commissioners, anything else that you would like to see for the next meeting, which is on the 22nd? Okay. Bruce, does that make sense in terms of what our ask is?
That totally makes sense. I totally understand.
Okay. All right. We will see you in a few weeks. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night, all.
Yep.
Thank you.
It's 8:20. We're going to go ahead and go with the, what I'd like to do is to jump back to the enforcement order discussion on 33 Star Hill Road. Are we still here? Tim, anyone here to speak to that?
I believe so.
Okay.
I'm promoting Gallagher J, which.
Yep. Okay. So while this is all kind of loading up, you can reference the site walk report dated June 26th on the property as well, where Amy Green went out and noted some flag responses.
Sarah, I'm not sure there is anybody here for this. I tried to promote Gallagher J and they declined to be a panelist, so that might not be Mark Gallagher.
Okay, so we'll come back to it then. Let's go ahead. So if anyone's listening, we're going to go ahead and start with the 8 o'clock public hearing, which is the abbreviated notice of resource area delineation, 550 King Street. Is anyone here to speak to that?
Yeah, I'm promoting some folks over for this.
So as you're being promoted, if you're new to Zoom with us for conservation, we do ask that you state your name and your affiliation to the project, please.
Hello, hello. My name is David Cowell. I'm a senior wetland scientist with Hancock Associates here tonight on behalf of the applicant. My clients may be in attendance tonight. I would just ask Tim, if you see either a Gary Armstrong or a Morgan Pearson, I would ask if you can promote them to panelists.
Yeah,
I'll give the presentation.
That's already been done, Dave.
Oh, outstanding. Okay, then they're on board. I don't know that they'll have anything to say. I'll give the presentation.
That's okay.
So, all right. Good to see you again, Sarah, and some fresh faces here. We filed an ANRAD to affirm the extent of wetlands at the property at 550 King Street. 550 King Street is a developed commercial property, office space with associated parking. And there are two vegetated wetland systems on the property that we delineated. If you'll allow me to share screen.
Yep, please
pull
go.
up the site plans. Let's see here. Share a window. All right. Let's see if I can. Are you guys now seeing the site plan? Is that projected?
No,
No?
I'm not seeing it.
Seeing a web page tab open, but it's blank.
Oh, it's a web page. Okay. Never. All right. Let me. I think I meant to share. All right. One more time. We'll try it again. I'm going to share entire screen. Share. Forgive me while I work through the technical nuance here.
Sarah, where is 550 King Street?
It's the IBM building.
Right up top.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's the IBM building. Does it also include the former Chinese restaurant property?
Exactly. And that's really where one of the areas of our jurisdiction is. And that's what Dave's going to go over.
Yes.
That's what I figured. Is that also called 550?
All. Yep.
I think that's included as well, Carl.
Yeah.
Can you guys see my screen yet? Am I still not? You have it. Okay.
Dave, are you going to go ahead and start with the broad overview first so you can look at the two areas? One we know is jurisdictional, the other I'm unclear.
Yep, sure. Well, we have existing conditions survey of the entire lot, but I've only included the sheets that have jurisdictional wetlands on them. The majority of the site is asphalt. It's expansive parking areas around a corporate office building. The two wetlands, one is located on the east, the western side of the property, and that's the one that is this oval shaped here. This wetland, it's pretty pronounced. I believe it was historically a created stormwater detention basin serving the corporate office park. It was constructed, I believe, sometime in the early 1980s. This, however, predated the exemption afforded to stormwater features. That was, I forget if that was 96. So it can and is jurisdictional. So this was here's the top. This is the cut sheet. So that's just the top of the wetland, and here's the lower side of the wetland. It would be isolated if not for there's a 36-inch culvert that drains this. Let me see if I can get to a closer scale. There's a 36-inch head wall and outlet from this feature that we believe goes underneath the road and then discharges out to the other side. And there are mapped wetlands on the other side of this. So this one is transparently a jurisdictional BVW. The second wetland, which is the area, Carl, that you mentioned that includes the Chinese restaurant, is this wetland over here. Carl, if you can see this property line right here, or that this this was the I believe the Chinese restaurant site for the Yangtze River or something like that, or it may have been this site. This wetland, so we delineated this and we came full circle around it, and it appears to be a confined wetland system without any outlet to it. The wetland, it's abutted by, there's a medical office building right here, the Acton Crossroads. This is bordered by a very tall concrete retaining wall that goes around the side of the building. And as this wetland was delineated, it came full circle. These are the lowest elevations. And what I did was I specifically investigated whether or not there was any drainage outlet or culvert that drains this wetland out below King Street. And there's nothing that we can find in the field, and nothing that we can find in prior plans of record that would indicate that there is any outlet to this wetland. As the wetland hits the retaining wall associated with this building, the wetland coincides with the wall of the retaining wall, and then again it comes further north, and it's a concentric circular polygon without any outlet to it.
You may want to have Tim look up that Acton Crossroads permit. So I remember, the discussion on that medical building.
You're right, Carl. There was a lot of discussion on that. Many of us were on with that. So I would encourage Tim and Dave to pull that file. It's not
Tim
that
had, for the record, Tim had sent me some prior plans of record because I asked them specifically that question, whether or not there were any plans of record that detailed an outlet to this wetland system. He did send me some previous plans of record that, and it called this bordering vegetated wetland, but there was nothing in any of the plans of record that would have affirmed that it was in fact bordering. I couldn't find any drainage outlet on any of the prior plans of record. And I suspect that sometimes when it doesn't matter to an applicant, that they delineate a vegetated wetland and don't differentiate between isolated and bordering. So I'm happy to work with Tim if there's any other plans of record, but he did send me some, and none of what I found in the plans of record were conclusive that this was bordering.
And there's no culvert, there's nothing there that comes from across the road?
No, I investigated the opposite side of the street as well. I walked up and down King Street to see if there was a culverted outlet or anything, and I was unable to find anything.
Okay.
So this is based both on field observation and some query of plans of record to see if there was a culvert documented that may have been buried or no longer there. And
Dave, when did you do your flagging?
Well, we originally flagged this about 2 years ago, but because we didn't file an ANRAD within 2 years, we went back out and reflagged this year. About 2 months ago, we went back out and we redid all of the wetland flags, making sure that our delineation from 2 years ago remained accurate, and again, investigated this area that we investigated 2 years ago to see if site condition had changed or if anything is. The only difference from the wetland that the delineation that we had done previously was that we bumped out these 4 flags that they're arbitrarily wetland flag 1, where this used to cut across right here. And we added this little bump out right here. But that was the only thing that changed from our delineation 2 years ago and our refresh of the wetland flags 2 months ago.
Okay, commissioners, questions for Dave so far? Historically, with something like this, we would probably be looking at a third-party review. That now that you have the flags done.
That's it. Yeah, I talked to the client, or I talked to my client about I said the likely possibility of this would be at least doing a site walk with members of the commission to walk the wetland flags and view it for yourselves. And secondarily, that this may be subject to third-party peer review to affirm whether or not this wetland's isolated or not.
Okay. Commissioners, shall we go ahead and look at setting a time?
Hey, Dave, there's work that's been going on that site. There's equipment there. I haven't seen, where they what's going on close to the wetland area, but they've stayed away from that wetlands area.
They have, to the best of my knowledge. And again, I believe we have, is it Gary Armstrong on tonight that may be able to talk about that? I did see equipment staged out there in the rear parking lot where it was fenced off. And I wasn't able to access the area that was fenced off where the equipment was, but it was fenced off between there in the wetland. So that's a good question. Yeah.
Gary Armstrong
hey, Gary,
with Foley Companies is here. So I was waiting for the moment to break in there, David. Thank you. Yeah. So if the area that you're referring to with the equipment is the area of the old Yangtze River restaurant, there is equipment that is out there that is staged there. That's actually Rivoli that's doing the work in the street. They're just bringing their equipment in there and parking it during the off hours, and then they pull back out into the street when they work. So they're not actually doing any work in that area currently.
So
and then the other work,
if we can just clarify for a second, I think what the commissioners are seeking is that equipment parked in what we would consider a resource area?
Okay. It's parked within the asphalt of the old Yangtze River site. So it's in the former parking lot as opposed to in the area behind.
Okay, that could be problematic for sure.
Right. It's not in the resource area, Sarah, but it's going to be likely within 100 at least.
It's within 100 feet. Yeah.
So the challenge is that would not be allowed if we had, for instance, Gary, any type of spill, oil, leaking, gas. That would be problematic for sure.
Yeah, I mean, easy enough for us to pull it out of there. It literally is being done in cooperation with LELWD for the work that's taking place out in the street. So it was a use of convenience, easy enough for us to push them out of there.
Yeah, I think they can still use
just move them
the southwestern corner area, at least the western half of the parking area. But
okay, I'll shoot up there tomorrow morning and get some delineators put in to pull them up closer to the street. It's fine.
Sure. Yeah, Gary, the ANRAD plan does demarcate the 100-foot buffer zone, so it is on the ANRAD plan, and you can use that to eyeball where you would need to move equipment to vacate 100 feet.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. We'll do that.
Okay. Sorry, Gary. Didn't mean to cut you off, but I knew the commissioners were going to ask that straight away.
Yeah, I've got a habit of answering things in life incorrectly, so thank you for putting me on the right track. So, but that's it. And then the other work that you see taking place out on site is the work associated with the infrastructure for the project, and that's over on the other side of the IBM building and not within any of the areas. So,
yep.
Okay. Commissioners, any other question of Gary or Morgan? I see that you're here with us. Anything you'd like to add or introduce yourself?
Hey, everyone. No, I'm all set, but just as an intro, I'm Morgan Pearson, SVP of Real Estate and Development, helping to lead the project. But I'm all set. Appreciate your time.
Okay, thank you. So, commissioners, back to the original question of setting a site visit. As some of you might be, Dave, you know us well, but Gary and Morgan, that some people work during the day, maybe a little bit later in the afternoon or very early morning. If we're looking, so we meet again on July the 22nd. So commissioners would like to see if we could get something scheduled for the next week, if that's possible. And then, Tim, when is Ed usually available? At noon or not noon? Kyle, I get that confused.
You say Ed?
I'm the noon. Yeah. I'm the noon guy.
Yeah, but is Ed with you on noon as well? No, Ed's after. Okay.
It's usually me and Mike midday. They're available.
Okay. Michael and Kyle, by chance, would you have noon on Monday or noon on Tuesday? I could do either of those two.
Yeah, I can do either one.
Yeah, Monday would be better, but I can make either work, I think.
Shall we do that? Does that work for you, Dave?
Yep. What's the time and date?
So it'd be this coming Monday at noon, and I don't know.
Monday at noon.
14th.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. I can do Monday at noon.
Where would you like for us to meet?
Why don't we meet right there at the parking lot to the old Chinese restaurant, the old Yangtze River, right there
Okay.
at that intersection? I think that would be a good point. We can always look at the other bordering vegetated wetland if
Yes.
you want to, but I think
Yep.
the isolated one is the one of greatest interest to the commission.
Yep, I think for us to be diligent, we would look at both, and then and we can look at the flags, but I would also make the assumption, if the commissioners agree, to start the process of a third-party review as well. Commissioners, is that what you would like?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, I would ask in the interest of my client to solicit bids for third-party review sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
We can do the site work on Monday, but still get the ball rolling in that regard as well.
Okay. And it does sound as though you need to do like perhaps a little bit more discovery in conjunction with Tim and Files to where the medical building is next door, and to see if there is some file somewhere that shows that connection of the wetlands.
Yep. I'll talk to Tim. I'll look over what he had sent me previously, which were some older plans, but I'll work with them to inquire whether or not there's anything specific to the medical building that I haven't been privy to yet.
Okay, great. So we will put you forward to July 22nd, and we'll see some people Monday at noon.
Outstanding.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Good.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it.
Okay.
You're welcome.
It is 8:38. Let's go ahead. We're going to go ahead and go to our 8:30 continued public hearing, notice of intent, 64 Beaverbrook Road, Lot 1.
Oh, we skipped one, Sarah.
What?
We skipped one. We have request for the amendment.
Yep, that's right. Sorry, 8:15. Continued public hearing, request for amended order of conditions, Foster Street reconstruction, DEP 204-0991, relocation of leaching catch basins. Did not mean to skip that, sorry. Who's here to chat with us on that? I think, commissioners, you'll see that there was a large file that was sent for your review. Aaron, do you want to go ahead and kick us off?
Yes, good evening. Tim, if there's Tracy Coppolotti from MassDOT and James Gallagher from MassDOT, I'm not sure if they're in attendance, but if you... Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, perfect.
Well, good evening, Commission. Thanks for having me back. We are here to request an amendment on the Foster Street project in Littleton. I'm a representative of the town of Littleton, that is the applicant, and my name is Aaron Keegan, Senior Transportation Engineer at Fuss & O'Neill. And I may be joined by some representatives of MassDOT if they're in attendance. I see Tracy's here as well. Tracy's from District 3, MassDOT Environmental, and James Gallagher is with I believe he's with the Highway Design of MassDOT District 3, who is overseeing the construction of the project. Just as a reminder, so this is a town design. The construction is being managed, overseen, and paid for by MassDOT as part of their transportation improvement program. And let me just share my screen. Pick the right one here this time. Okay. Okay, are you seeing a plan view with a red line? Okay, great. Okay, just as a reminder, our request is to reduce the number of leaching catch basins that were originally proposed on the roadway corridor project due to the discovery of high groundwater. Since our last hearing, we've taken the following actions. We performed 3 additional groundwater test pits in the project area. We now have groundwater elevation data for every 400 feet approximately along the 0.7 mile corridor on Foster Street. We've also submitted an alternatives analysis as requested by the Commission, and that goes over 6 different alternatives, what MassDOT refers to as stormwater best management practices to infiltrate water by the roadside. And finally, we've selected a proposed preferred alternative to provide an equivalency of stormwater infiltration volume that the 4 leaching catch basins that could not be installed would have held. And so we've provided a location for a 100-foot long crushed stone diaphragm along the edge of Foster Street. And I'll show you some more detailed images of that. But I guess what I'd like to do next is kind of just walk through the project area and show you where we have test pit data, and then kind of give you an overview of our alternatives analysis, and then show the proposed equivalent that we're proposing would take the place of the 4 leaching catch basins that couldn't be proposed. Before I do that, Ernie, any comments or questions off the bat? Okay, so the first image I'm showing here is just a reminder of the project locus area. We're on Foster Street. Project limit starts at Taylor Street and proceeds about 7/10 of a mile. It actually ends at Balsam Lane and goes past Kelly Road, Grimes Lane, and it also passes the frontage of the MBTA station. It also goes underneath the Route 2 overpass bridge. And so the purpose and need of the project was we were actually narrowing the road, but adding a 10-foot shared use path along the north side for bicycles and pedestrians. So it's what we call a healthy alternatives, transportation alternatives project, complete streets. As I mentioned, we took 3 additional test pits. I'm just going to walk through just quickly where we have test pit data. This is Taylor Street at Foster Street, the kind of western limits of the project. We did a new test pit after the last hearing at this location, found a groundwater depth of 42 inches at that location. This is a test pit that we already had for last time. This is 36 inches. Moving east, we're now at the frontage of 305 Foster Street. The groundwater depth there was found to be 48 inches. This is one of the locations where there had been a leaching catch basin proposed. I just want to show you a detail. I know I've showed this the last hearing, but just as a reminder, this was the full-size leaching catch basin, an example that was proposed. They're 6-foot, 6.5-foot structures underground. They require 8.5-foot depth of groundwater for proper infiltration. And these were proposed at 5 locations connected to the back of a traditional deep sump catch basin, and that was to provide some additional groundwater recharge. And so this was the location of one of those proposed, where unfortunately the groundwater was not 8.5 feet deep. Continuing east on Foster Street, the next location where we had test pit information, across from 300 Foster Street, and the groundwater found 38 inches was the depth. Continuing east, now at the frontage of 295 Foster Street, another location where we tested the groundwater and found a 38-inch depth. Now we're east of Kelly Road, and this test pit had a groundwater depth of 34 inches. That was also a location where one of the leaching catch basins had been previously proposed. And now we're close to the railroad track crossing in Grimes Lane. There's a test pit in this area. We're showing a groundwater depth of 36 inches. All right, now we're moving to, this is directly across from the MBTA frontage. We did have a construction test pit performed there that found water at 16 inches deep. This location, however, has some other issues. It's next to a steep embankment, and it's impossible for us to actually work on that steep slope of that embankment. It leads down to a wetland. So this is an area where, even though we have deeper groundwater, it's the constructability concerns here of adding something at the road shoulder is due to the slope that's just at the edge of road. And finally, I skipped one. So moving east, we're headed towards Balsam Lane now. We're still on Foster Street. This was one of the new test pits that we sampled after last hearing. At 18 inches, the test pit struck ledge and couldn't go any further, so we don't have a sample point there for the groundwater. That also happened. We took another sample just a couple hundred feet east of that location, and there was ledge encountered at 36 inches before we could sample the groundwater. However, on the opposite side of the road, again, this is between the MBTA station and Balsam Lane, we did have an older test pit that we had sampled previously. It found groundwater in that location at 108 inches. So that was the deepest test pit that we had. We are able to fit in one of the proposed leaching catch basins at this location. You can see it here, connected to this deep sump catch basin system, and so we originally had 5 leaching catch basins. This is one location where we're able to submit one. And so with that, those extra 3 test pits, we now have a total of 11 test pits for groundwater. It's about every 400 feet on the corridor. And we feel that we've exhausted the sampling area to kind of look for, additional areas where there might be deeper groundwater. The next thing I'd like to present is an overview of an alternatives analysis. But before I do that, I guess I'll pause for any questions. Okay, so moving on, we performed an alternatives analysis for different stormwater countermeasures, specifically to provide infiltration along the roadside. And I just want to mention that the constraints of the project as a linear roadway project, we of course are dealing with right-of-way, so the town's road layout is about 70 feet wide in the project area. The edge of road itself is about 40 feet, so you've got about 15 feet on each side of the road, more or less, before you reach the end of the town layout, which is where you border private property. And so you've got about 15 feet to deal with on each side of the road. However, you often have other constructability constraints within that 15 feet. For example, trees, any stormwater infiltration measure that requires clearing or excavating can, of course, incur additional tree impacts. As I mentioned, the groundwater depth the data that we presented is another constraint or constructability downside to some of the possible stormwater countermeasures. Another constructability concern when talking about what's possible at the edge of road to infiltrate water are the slopes at the existing shoulders. So any steep slopes, whether it's a downslope or an upslope, could provide a disadvantage for a given stormwater infiltration countermeasure because it might require filling or cutting at the edge of road, which may make it difficult to tie back into private property at the edge of the right-of-way. So that's another concern. Sometimes that can be a downside to some of the options that we have. And then as we saw some of the groundwater test pit results, there's also shallow ledge in this project area, which in some cases has limited what we can do for infiltration. And so just we submitted a report that goes through 6 different options. I'll go through an overview. If you'd like more detail on any of these specific alternatives that we looked at, we can discuss that. But just quickly to show you the 6. So one of them was a permeable pavement treatment, and this gives you kind of a cross-section and a graphic of what that looks like. So it would be a porous pavement, and it has requirements for choker course of stone, filter course, a reservoir course. So this is kind of like a sandwich of permeable material. We looked at that. The next one I'd like to just kind of show you is so we can get into the narrative or the tables that we provided. If there's questions, the next one that we looked at is called pavement disconnection. And so the idea is that you design the project to pitch water from an impervious area, such as the 10-foot shared use path, to an area of vegetated area that infiltrates. The caveat with this one is that the slope of the vegetated area has to be maximum about 5%, so that's a fairly flat area. Also, the width of that area has to be at least about 10 feet wide is you're kind of looking at the minimum. So in some, in many areas of the project, we're constrained with providing that 5% slope and kind of a vegetated 10-foot area without, incurring tree impacts or, other kinds of clearing. For example, the stone wall or, private property driveways, that type of thing. In some areas, I should add that we do have the shared use path pitching away from the road, but not in all areas. So the next alternative we looked at is just a traditional infiltration basin. This is something you would see more for like a site design for a site development. It's less common for a linear road project because of those space constraints at the edge of road. But the idea is that, as I'm sure you're familiar, you excavate down, requires a certain groundwater depth, and you provide this kind of spillway for treatment, a check dam, and then an infiltration area with some outlet structures for overflow. That's another option that we put in our analysis. Next up would be like a linear swale. These are fairly compact and linear and often are included at roadsides, but they do require some excavation, which, as we've seen with the groundwater in this project area, you not only need the excavation to create the swale, but then you need the 2 foot of separation below the bottom of the swale to provide the infiltration. So that was a bit of a challenge for us in implementing these in this project. Another alternative is, of course, like a subsurface infiltration system. Again, this would be something you probably would see more in a site design or a parking lot. We were looking at sort of miniature versions of this, and could we put them under the shared use path? But even with the smallest, manufactured versions of these systems, you're still looking at something like a 48-inch to 50-inch groundwater depth in order to have that separation beneath the plastic system. And then finally, the last alternative that we're showing is one that we're actually recommending for this project. It's a crushed stone diaphragm by the roadside, and I'll show you where we're proposing this in a moment. But the idea is that you provide a trench. It's a 3-foot wide trench, 18 inches deep, with a double wash crushed stone. It's wrapped in a permeable geotextile fabric to keep out sediment or silt from the crushed stone area. The top 3 inches, this is by the finished grade is essentially the edge of road. The top 3 inches of the crushed stone is not wrapped in the geotextile fabric, and this does require maintenance. The town would be required to check every 6 months to see if this 3-inch top layer of crushed stone is clogged with any debris, and or if the stone has been removed by a car overtracking or something of that nature. And so what we would propose is that the town inspect every 6 months and replace and or clean the top of this 3-inch layer of crushed stone at the top of the diaphragm to keep the system infiltrating into the ground. And so we've selected this alternative. I'll just show a kind of summary table where we sort of went through the pros and cons of each of the 6 infiltration alternatives, looking at it in terms of right-of-way, groundwater elevation, depth of elevation requirements, maintenance, tree impacts, and constructability. It was our conclusion that the crushed stone diaphragm achieves what we're trying to get. We're trying to get that extra infiltration. It provides that with the least impacts to these, with respect to these other factors that we talked about. And we actually, I'll show the calculations at the end, but we've shown an area of crushed stone diaphragm that is equivalent to the area of the 4 leach and catch basins that we couldn't install. The proposed area, it is along the south side of Foster Street. This is between the MBTA station and Balsam Lane. What we're proposing to do in the plans is to remove a 100-foot section of asphalt curb that was proposed in the project, and that would leave an open area where we could install the crushed stone diaphragm at the edge of road. This would be at grade, and so stormwater would be able to flow, sheet flow from the road into this area, and infiltrate into the crushed stone diaphragm. If the crushed stone diaphragm becomes saturated, the stormwater is either going to sheet flow over the crushed stone diaphragm into the vegetated area by the roadside, or it would go back into the road, and the road is actually sloped from page right to page left here, so it would go back into the closed drainage system that we provided vis-a-vis a deep sump catch basin on Foster Street into the storm main. So it's essentially providing a volume, as I mentioned, of infiltration that actually exceeds. Let me just quickly go to the calculations. I'm showing the calculation for the volume that the standard MassDOT leach and catch basins provided. There were 4 of them. We're looking at about 37 cubic feet each, and so the sum of those 4 would be at 150 cubic feet held within those catch basins. The calculation for the 100-foot diaphragm trench, given the dimensions of that trench, and we're looking at about 180 feet of volume. And that includes a discount for a reduction for the fact that there's stones there. So we're only looking at the voids between the stones for that storage volume. And just in a cross section at the roadside, just to give you a sense of what that looks like. So previously we had at the edge of road in the 100-foot location that I showed, this would have been an HMA or a hot mix asphalt curb. We would be removing that to allow stormwater sheet flow, and we're showing the cross-sectional area of that crushed stone diaphragm. And so what we would do is we'd have to blend the slope of the existing road shoulder back to the edge of the stone diaphragm. So in this case, you'd have a bit of an upslope from the stone diaphragm to existing ground. But in some other areas, for example, this is just another spot on the 100-foot span that we're showing, you'd be grading down from the stone diaphragm to the existing ground. So that's what we came up with. We listened to the commission's comments. We've provided an alternative, and again, just to reiterate the original request, it's a request to not install the 4 leach and catch basins where originally proposed due to high groundwater, and instead install this stone diaphragm where we did find deep groundwater at an equivalent volume. And so I'll open the floor to questions, or if Tracy or Jim want to make any comments, that'd be welcome.
So, Aaron, thank you for
Yes.
that. That was a lot to take in. Let's just pause here for a second.
Sure.
Let the commissioners see if there's any questions that they have of the stone diaphragm presently, or of your testing methodology.
Sure.
So it sounds like the stone diaphragm is going to take water that's running off of the street directly.
Yes. And so the top 3 inches of the diaphragm provide a little bit of treatment, not much, but they're going to, filter out any kind of particulates, and then allow water to infiltrate into this, the lower 15 inches has the geotextile for infiltration.
I guess what I'm thinking is it's almost guaranteed to have material running off into it if it's just coming off the street. And that's fine. I mean, it's a really creative solution. But the town would definitely have to be bought into doing the maintenance on it.
Yes, and so we presented this to the director of DPW director, Stephen Yonley, and he's agreed that the town would perform it. We can provide a written attestation with a 6-month inspection frequency, and that the town would replace the top layer of stone if it becomes depleted or clogged with debris.
Aaron, in your
Sounds good.
experience with this, what happens in frozen conditions or when there's just snow cover over the entire length of that?
Well, that would present infiltration blockage.
So where,
I would add,
where does that flow go then?
it would go back into Foster Street into the into the closed drainage system.
Okay, thank you.
Would they have to do something special with plowing along that line?
Well, that's an interesting question. We could ask the town to keep this area clear during snow plowing. The plow would, of course, be on the edge of road, and it would be pushing snow typically to the roadside. If there was a request to clear the area of the stone diaphragm from snow, that's something we could, ask the town if they'd be willing to do that as an extra maintenance requirement.
Aaron, what happens with and I'm thinking with the product, whether it's a brine or a salt that's put on under icy conditions, is this now more of a direct wash into a certain area that vegetation is then ultimately going to be decimated because of it's so concentrated in that particular area?
Well, the area is now, it is a lawn area by the roadside. The existing condition is more or less sheet flow into that existing vegetated area. So I think it would be equivalent to the existing condition as far as runoff.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Aaron, can you discuss how you picked this location? Because if I'm looking at the plans right, this is very adjacent to where the one full-size leaching catch basin will be installed?
Yes, and the reason for that is that this was, by far the deepest groundwater that we found in the project area. Also, this side of the road is the opposite side of the road where the shared use path exists. It would be problematic for us to put it on the side of the road with the shared use path because we wouldn't be able to remove the curb. The curb kind of acts as a sort of protection between the road and the shared use path. So this is sort of an ideal spot where we had deep groundwater and we could remove a section of curb and allow runoff by sheet flow at the edge of road.
Yep, I can completely appreciate the side of the road that you picked. I guess my one concern is that we went from 5 of these leaching catch basins and we're down to the 1, and now we're just kind of supplementing it with this space right now. I mean, it's adding obviously to help infiltrate. I guess we're losing infiltration in different areas of the project site now. Right. That was our main concern, right? We had 5 of these basins spread out the entire length of the project. Mm-hmm. And now we had the 1, and now we have kind of 1 plus in the same area. Yes, that's my one concern is that we're increasing our infiltration, but not in multiple locations. They're not a variety of area. We're focusing all of that infiltration in one spot of the site. Was there any? Was there a reason that this 100-foot section was chosen and not? Is it just because of the depth of the groundwater? How much?
That is yes. That is the main reason. Okay. Yep.
Anyone else have any other questions? Tracy, I know that you're here. Is there anything that you'd like to add to the discussion?
Hi, Tracy Copolati, Mass DOT. Just wanted to add that Aaron could clarify this, I believe, but I do know that, the 4-foot sumps that are provided in all of the new catch basins, I believe that might, Aaron, does that bring us to the correct percentage? And are these structures that were supposed to go on the 5 structures, was that on top of that as far as the removal rates?
Well, the traditional deep sump catch basins, they provide 25% treatment. It doesn't quite, it's sort of the maximum extent practicable. Right. For this project, we weren't able to meet the stormwater standards fully. It's as a redevelopment project. And so the leaching catch basins that were proposed were providing groundwater recharge. Some people take credit for treatment, but it's mainly groundwater recharge that they add. But the treatment that we're providing this project was mainly through the deep sump catch basins, 25% that are remaining.
Right, okay. Yeah, I know it's a tough site. It's really constricted. Not sure what else we could do out here.
So commissioners, we've kind of come full circle. We have sent the applicant away with a long list of things to bring in for tonight. Aaron, I think, has been pretty comprehensive in his presentation and the data. How would we like to proceed? So this is a request for an amended order of conditions.
Yeah, I mean, Aaron, I fully appreciate the alternatives. Definitely the alternatives that we had in mind, I think. And so it's good to read your narrative on the pros, cons, and reasons for the options that were selected. I do agree that this is likely all that we can really do as far as putting more water back into the ground. So I guess I'm comfortable at this point. I would like to see this installed somewhere else along the roadway, but
yeah, for sure. Other commissioners? Is anyone?
I'm just curious for the DOT standard leaching catch basin. Is there literally only one option? And I'm just asking out of my own curiosity. Is there no other possibility?
We actually did discuss that, Michael, and we did look at, like, honestly, even systems that are used typically in a septic system leaching, because they do make small compartmental, sections that you can add on and pipe in between them. But even that, it's just, we just don't have the 2-foot separation.
Aaron did share that with us at the last hearing.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Yeah, that there was something smaller. I think we were hopeful for this additional discovery that we might be able to use one of the smaller units
right
in a different place, but that does not seem to be the case. Okay. Any other questions? Tim, anything?
Nope.
I'm good, Sarah.
Okay. Would someone like to make a motion to support the request?
Sure. I'll make a motion that we approve the request for amended order of conditions for Foster Street construction, DP number 204-0991.
I'll second.
Okay, thank you, Michael. All those in favor?
Kyle Maxfield.
Kyle Maxfield, aye.
Sarah Seward.
Sarah Seward, aye.
Michael Livingston.
Michael Livingston, aye.
And Carl Melberg, aye.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. And
yeah, thanks for working with us, Aaron. Appreciate the work.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Thank you all. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Bye.
Okay, it's 9:10. We're going to go ahead with the 8:30 continued public hearing, notice of intent, 64 Beaverbrook Road, Lot 1, DEP 204-1018. And this is a construction of a shared driveway. Tim, can you fill us in on this?
Sure. I just promoted Greg. Since the last meeting that this was discussed, which I believe was the first meeting where it was opened, we did have a site walk and get a chance to get out there and see the lay of the land. And I believe Greg has provided a tree plan showing what's going to be removed.
So, Greg, if you want to share, do you have something that you'd like to share with us?
Yes, thank you very much. Bear with me. How's that?
Yep.
Okay. Well, thanks very much, members of the commission. First, my name is Greg Roy with Dillson Roy. I'm representing the applicant this evening, Hannah and Mike Gruar at 64 Beaverbrook Road. I appreciate your time this evening, and I wanted to just apologize out of the gate here. I had a personal matter come up a couple weeks ago. I meant to do this presentation 2 weeks ago, so I appreciate your accommodation, and I apologize for any inconvenience that caused you with the last-minute continuation. So, nonetheless, here I am. As Tim mentioned, we opened this hearing probably a couple months ago now with your commission. So I'll just give a real brief history of what we're proposing to do. The Gruars live at 64 Beaverbrook Road, which is the existing house and driveway right in this area here. Beaverbrook Road is on this side of the plan. They have a significant amount of land area in the back of the property that is upland. They approached us quite some time ago now to pursue looking at putting a couple of house lots, developing the developable land with some house lots in the back of the property. There is a bordering vegetated wetland that completely cuts off the site. It's shown here in yellow. It widens out as you go towards the north and then really narrows up quite a bit on this side of the property. So the developable land is on the opposite side of the existing house on the back side of the property. So we're proposing to access that 2 house lots through the construction of a common driveway. So one wetland crossing, proposed wetland crossing. We submitted a plan to you initially that showed the crossing essentially in the same location, but with a couple of significant, we've made a couple of significant modifications pursuant to the first opening meeting and the comments that were received from your commission that I want to go over tonight. So as I presented last time, the common driveway was proposed in this location of the site, really due to the fact that this is the location where the wetland is narrowest. I think some of you were on site at the site walk and can attest to the fact that this is a really confined, although it's not mapped as intermittent or perennial on the USGS map, it's almost stream-like in characteristic. So it's a very linear type wetland feature. One of the first thing I wanted to mention, we had initially shown some culverts, traditional driveway culvert to convey the flow of that wetland across the proposed stream. It was requested to us that we review the possibility of doing a span across the wetland resource area. That makes perfect sense in this area. So we have, that's one of our more significant plan revisions, was to revise the plan to include a span, 3-sided, it'd be a natural bottom structure when all said and done, so that we can maintain the characteristics of that stream after the construction is complete. So that's sort of the first and most significant thing that we did between the previously submitted plan and now. Secondly, we have filed this project, while not stormwater management is not required pursuant to the Wetlands Protection Act in sort of the Conservation Commission jurisdiction. It is required pursuant to the town's stormwater management bylaw. So we have filed the stormwater management permit with the planning board that's operating going concurrently with this application. So we do have some stormwater management proposed on this project. We initially showed it in this area here, immediately adjacent to the wetland resource area, and adjacent to the shared driveway. We received some comments from your commission on that, and we looked at it between then and now, and we've shifted that stormwater management area to this location, almost completely outside of the buffer zone. So we've regraded this front section of the common driveway or the shared driveway to make sure that the flow comes down and gets into this area and will not directly sheet flow off into the wetland resource areas as we had previously shown. That was sort of the second significant thing that we changed. Thirdly, we had previously shown a replication area ratio of 2-to-1 on the plan. We were reminded at the opening public hearing that your regulations, the commission will be looking for 3-to-1. So we have increased the replication area from what was previously proposed to 3-to-1. It is actually now proposed in the previous area that we're proposing the stormwater basin, which after doing the site walk and more of a detailed analysis appears to be a much better area than where we were proposing it before, which was on this side of the area. I think the grades work out quite a bit better in this location. So that was 3. 4, we looked to see what we could do. One of the things you asked us to do is locate all of the trees that would be proposed to be removed within the limit of work. We did provide a tree removal plan in the packet. Well, we really tried to reduce the limit of clearing and grading particularly through this area of the 100-foot buffer zone. So on the low side, we're proposing a series of boulders, retaining wall style boulders. It's not a huge grade break that we need to accommodate here, but so we don't have to chase the slope so far out. We're proposing to contain that grading with some boulders so that we can save some of these trees that we're showing here on the plan. So we tried to the entire site's wooded. There's not much we can do about that, but we tried to reduce and minimize the amount of clearing that we needed to do to achieve the driveway, shared driveway to those 2 lots. Additionally, we had shown a turnout area on that within this portion of the site. That was really a carryover from when we were designing this to the town's common driveway standards, which would be 3 or more lots. This is 2 lots, so we're really not obligated to do that turnaround. And we turn with only 2 lots and a relatively short straightaway configured driveway. We didn't feel that it was warranted, so we were able to further reduce the amount of pavement within the buffer zone within that first few hundred feet of shared driveway. Let's see. I think the last thing I wanted to mention was relative to your comments was that we had initially shown some grading out in this area within the 50-foot wetland offset, which we have now resolved and moved everything outside of the 50-foot. So we have no, other than the proposed driveway crossing where we really can't do any other alternative other than like a helicopter access into the site. We're not showing any alteration within 50 feet of the bordering vegetated wetland. Sort of concurrently with your comments, we did receive some comments from DEP. A lot of them were redundant. I think your commission actually, your comments were similar, if not the same as what DEP commented. The one thing DEP asked us to do was to provide the wetland delineation data forms and wetland delineation report, which we did do between the last hearing and now. So I'm sure I'm missing a few things, but those were really the major highlights that we addressed. And I wanted to pause there and take any questions or comments that the commission has. I will mention that we are still ongoing with the planning board. Since we had a fairly significant plan revision, we wanted to hold up. The planning board is peer reviewing this from a stormwater management perspective. We wanted to, given the wetland impacts, we wanted to come to your board first, which we did, to get your initial comments. We did those plan revisions. Now the planning board is initiating, just within the last week, initiating peer review. So that is not complete yet, but I wanted to give you an update that that is in progress. The applicant has funded that, and that will be happening. We just don't have it to share this evening, but I wanted to give you that update.
Greg, who's doing the peer review?
Green International, I believe.
Okay. And then on this plan, have you noted areas for snow storage with that
Yes.
driveway? Okay.
Yes, we did. So we anticipate, since this is a straight push, you're of course going to have some snow banks like you would on the side of a driveway or a road. But we've identified this area here. Really, it's the straight push where you're going to be pushing most of that snow from that portion of the site. So we have identified that. The rest of the driveway is outside of the 100-foot buffer zone. So that
Greg, I will remind you, and this is what's hard with Zoom, is that we do ask that all the plans be color coded, so that way, easy, quick reference to actually see where your 50, where your 100 is. Right down.
Apologize for that. We can do that.
So, in relationship to the snow storage that you've noted, where is that in relationship, footage-wise?
Yeah. Thank you. Let me give you a different color line here for the 100-foot buffer zone. 100-foot buffer zone is this right here.
Okay, thank you.
And then over here is it on? That's where it is on the front side of the site. So the snow storage is completely outside of the 100-foot buffer zone.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Commissioners,
sorry, I interrupted.
Yep. Or comments? So it sounds like what you're saying, Greg, we meet on July the 22nd, that there may be other changes coming based on what the peer review is. So are you wishing to kind of just put it on pause for one meeting, or just?
Yeah, I mean, if there was any significant comments that we, that you folks had this evening as a result of what we've done, I guess I'd want to hear them. But yes, I would be naive to think that we won't have a little bit of back and forth with the peer review process. It is a relatively small project, but I'm sure there'll be a few things that we'll go back and forth with. I more mentioned the peer review because we mentioned it at the opening hearing, and I think that your commission will take some comfort in the fact that it's being peer reviewed by a third party relative to the stormwater, at least. And so I just wanted to make sure that you were aware that that was still ongoing and still part of the plan, albeit not provided yet.
But have the flags been verified, Tim?
Well, we did do a site walk. I don't. We reviewed the wetland delineation. Perhaps some of the members that were on site can speak to that, but I don't think that there's any. I don't know of any issues that the commission had with relative to the delineation, but happy to hear.
Any commissioners have questions?
Hey, Greg, how long is that bridge crossing?
Long in terms of what the span?
Yeah.
I think we're doing, let's see, I can tell you exactly. I think it's 6 feet. 6 feet, I think we're doing, which I think the span is about 5. The actual channel is about 5 feet, and we're proposing obviously wider than what's there existing.
So you're going beyond. See, it's not going top of bank to top of bank. You're going beyond.
Correct, and we did provide a narrative of the stream crossing standards. We designed the crossing in accordance with the stream crossing standard. So 1.2 times the bank full width, openness ratio, the whole 9 there.
And that's a live bottom, not a closed.
Correct.
Yep.
Bottom, yes.
Commissioners, any other questions? So as you'll see, you have 2 public hearings because there's 2 separate lots and 2 separate DEP numbers.
Correct.
So officially what we'll do is we'll close this one with the mention to, would you like for us to put you on the 22nd?
I think so, yes. I would appreciate that.
Okay.
I think at this point, we're hopeful that we can move faster than we have in the past. And again, I thank you for your patience so far.
Okay. So what we'll do is we're going to officially close this hearing, and then now I'd like to open the 831 continued public hearing notice of intent, 64 Beaverbrook Road, Lot 3, DEP number 204-1019, construction of a shared driveway.
Thanks. And I guess I jumped the gun because everything I could say, I think I could put back in the record. But I think Lot 3 is the lot that's actually further into the site. So it does not contain the the common driveway. Really, you'd be talking about the impact that you'd be talking about on Lot 3 would be areas within this line here. Okay. And that is really just the detention basin. So that's our limited clearing right along the edge of the 50-foot. So you're talking about this area here.
And that area is under peer review as well, correct?
Correct. Yep. This whole site, we filed this whole site as one filing with the planning board. So the whole thing is being peer reviewed. And then the only other area that's in the jurisdiction would be this small section. I think all of it is outside of 75 feet, which is really just the breakout grading to the leaching field. So that again would just be all just grading associated with that. No hard structures.
Commissioners, any questions on those particular areas? So it sounds as though we will continue this as well to July 22nd and look for notes from any peer review comments of back and forth.
Yeah, that was all I was going to ask for, Sarah. Yeah, if we can just be kept in the loop with how the peer review turns out.
For sure. Okay. All right. Anything else for this hearing? Okay. Thank you. Sorry we're running late for you. Thank you for your patience.
No, understandable. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to scoot back to administrative discussions. Enforcement order discussion on 33 Star Hill Road. Tim, do you want to just bring us up to date? So as a refresher reminder, the cutting occurred back in June, like around the 13th or so.
Yeah. So since then, at the last meeting, the commission decided it would be best if we had Amy go out there and do delineation and see what she thought of Mr. Crossman's delineation that he had done. And so Amy had wrote up a site report describing what she thought of the wetland out there. And I have it here. I can share it with you.
And that was sent, you did send that to the commissioners. So there are some leading points. Has this been shared with anyone in terms of Dave Crossman, or actually wouldn't be with Dave, it would be for the owner?
No, it hasn't been shared with them yet.
Okay. Based on the comments that are submitted, I would ask that it formally gets submitted to owner of record, which is the Gallaghers.
Sure.
And then ask for feedback. There are some actionable items in this list. And there are 4 comment reference kind of paragraphs. And the site is stable currently. I thought they were originally going to come in tonight, but
yeah, I thought so too.
I would make a suggestion that it gets posted for the next meeting. So officially have a time for the 22nd with the commission's permission. You all good with that?
Yes.
Because that way we've dedicated a time. Okay. So, Tam, are you okay with that? So we'll put them on and just let them know. Okay. We're going to go ahead over to Cloverdale, a butter complaint and mowing authorization. Tim, an update on that. I know you sent along some information, specifically the complaint as well.
Yep. So at the last meeting, what the commission decided is we were going to, Michael was going to work with me in providing a short form response to the edemas, basically saying that, we're going to investigate this and provide a longer form response after we get out there. So since then, Michael, myself, Lauren, we all went out there and we met with Jim O'Neill and we talked about what was the contents of the complaint. And if you'd like, we can run through the complaint and discuss what we noted on site. And
is it easier to do that, or is it easier to send like a narrative?
Like to draft one, are you saying?
I think probably the only reason I encourage that is that it gives you time to reflect to make sure you've really commented on everything versus coming off the top of your head for you and Lauren right now.
I could certainly draft a narrative. Michael, having been on site, is there anything specific that you wanted to mention?
Well, I guess there's two things. One was the disparity between what the edemas are asking for and what seemed like had already been put in place, like permission to mow the area to reduce invasives. What I understand was already granted, so they weren't mowing the lawn without permission. Same for storing the materials there. The only other thing that stuck out were features or things that were added, like the metal stakes to put a fence up for protecting some of the vegetation, and the railroad ties that were stuck in there. Beyond that, it seemed like most of the requests were, I don't want to say frivolous because they're not, but they seem unfounded.
Yeah. Sarah, I do feel comfortable running through this if you'd like.
Okay. Perfect. Yep.
Let me pull up the document real quick.
And commissioners, we'd like to welcome Lauren to her first full meeting on Zoom.
Good to see you all. Thanks for hiring me. Glad to be here.
Good to
Thanks
see you
for being
again.
part of our team. I hope you have a good pair of boots.
So what I want to focus on here is this section right here, what they requested of the town. Cease all unauthorized use and mowing by the O'Neills of U32 5A. And if we go to the map, I could show you which one that is. Okay, hold on. Here we go. So that's this parcel. Yes, 5A right here. So the O'Neills is this property. The edemas are this property back here. And this is the property in question, which I authorized Jim to extend what he was already authorized to mow on this parcel. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit. It's tough because I wish I could overlay the aerial on here. And honestly, it might be worth me going to the aerial to show you guys. Oh, this is much easier when you have a mouse and not a touchpad or whatever you call it. Okay. Okay. Boundary lines aren't exact. But this is the parcel in question right here. And so we authorized Jim. Yeah, this property line is actually significantly off here. I can zoom in a little bit without this zooming in all the way. So the boundary is more so, I believe it's further back along here, and then it runs down roughly in this linear fashion. And so I authorized Jim to extend his mowing in this area back here to suppress the burning bush and the bittersweet that's back there. And through guidance from, I believe it was, might have been University of New Hampshire who had published this. They said it was best for the smaller plants to cut or mow them before they get mature, and you could actually leave them in place for both species. And so that was the thought behind authorizing Jim to do that. I mean, the edge of the wood line over here is just, it's the invasives are encroaching. And as far as I'm concerned, the more suppression of invasives on conservation property, the better. So that was the first bullet, was the mowing aspect. And Michael, do you have anything to add on that?
No. It was pretty clear that he had permission to do so. And a good reason to.
Yeah. So the second one, replace missing survey stake and verify all the other survey stakes are in good standing. So the survey stakes that they're talking about are temporary. They're not bounds, permanent bounds that are in there. They're temporary wooden stakes that over time, they're not meant to last forever. Over time, they're going to rot. And that had been the case with the survey stake that's in question here. So there's a survey there existing. There's a survey stake right about here. And there's another one over here towards Great Road. The one that was in question that had been removed was somewhere in this vicinity. To me, it doesn't make, in my personal opinion, it doesn't make a lot of sense to ask them to replace that, because you can see this survey stake to that survey stake where the line is. I mean, it's a middle stake. It's not an important stake that's on the corner, showing the boundary. And I mean, those stakes aren't supposed to last forever anyways. So moving on to Michael, you have anything to add on that?
No, I guess my only question would be, what's proper? Should there be permanent marks there? If there should be, wooden stakes are not going to be, have all that long a life. And, should something go there, or is it adequate to leave it the way that it is?
And I guess that kind of leads to our next item here, number 3, removal of debris, another item. from
It does, doesn't it?
Because, when looking at property boundaries, what we're concerned about is encroachments, right? And I guess that's what they're trying to get at here, is that there's, what they're calling debris over here. Much of this is lumber that's on pallets, and there's some pallets that are stacked, but the pallets purpose, from my understanding, is that's where, when Jim would buy lumber for boardwalks that are being built on conservation properties, they're being stockpiled here in a location where this area is also mowed, and it definitely assists with access for the scouts when we do have scouts doing boardwalk projects, being able to come to Jim's property and access the lumber, load it up in the truck, and take it to the conservation property. The only other alternative to having the lumber stockpiled here would be to have it stockpiled at, the conservation property that is having the boardwalk built at it. I mean, personally, I kind of like that it's here because it's not necessarily towards the entrance where you're seeing all the traffic in the parking lot here. And since it's like kind of out of the view, it's less susceptible to people taking it. Whereas if we were to have it stockpiled at the properties where the boardwalk is being built, it would likely be at the entrance, and I would worry that people would take the lumber. And I believe there is a wheelbarrow here of some sort, and I believe Jim was saying that was used by, I'm not sure, it might have been a volunteer who was using it to transport the invasive species that he was removing from this patch here. So that's the debris in question.
Point of order, who owns the lumber? Doesn't conservation own the lumber?
We do, yep.
Yeah, I was just saying it's town materials being stored on town property for town projects, right?
Yeah, Jim just happens to be the one that's getting it and transporting it for us.
Right. I mean, we could put it in the parking lot at like town hall or something. So
is that area open to the public?
I mean, technically,
in theory, yeah,
the public can access it. And I think that goes back to, so there is a informal path. You wouldn't even know that it's a path, but it's, I guess, what some of the neighbors in this area use to access Cloverdale. So there's a path that runs through here, but I guess some of the neighbors in this area use this strip to access Cloverdale instead of going to Great Road, walking to the main entrance. And that
I thought Jim O'Neill actually had said that was on their property, and they had no issues because it was they'd rather the kids and whatnot be walking through there through the backyard than Great Road.
Yeah, I honestly can't remember. Michael, can you? Do you remember exactly where that was when Jim was talking about it?
I thought that he was saying that the Edemas would walk by just outside their property line and take the path to go into Cloverdale, like you mentioned. I don't remember. I remember him talking about other people going through that way, but
okay. Let's carry on with your list, Tim.
Yeah, I don't remember the exact location of the path. It's not visible out there. I think it was just something that he mentioned that it's somewhere over there. They walk to the property, which let's see. The next one is restore the parcel to its natural state with signage identifying it as town owned. So on this tree right here, there is actually one of our little circles that we have on trees. Not uncommon to see on our conservation properties that abut private property, where it says conservation land. So there is signage on this tree. There's really nowhere else to put signage on a tree on this property line. I mean, I guess in theory we could put some back here, but I don't know who would be. I don't believe this area really gets any use other than the scouts accessing the boardwalk material and Jim transporting the boardwalk material back there. So I'm not sure who would be seeing the signage on the tree saying it's conservation property. And I don't think it makes sense to have any sort of, and this isn't really for me to decide, this is just my personal opinion. I don't think it makes sense to have signage in the ground on like actual like wooden stakes, right? That have plaques that say, town land or conservation property. Michael,
do we have guidelines about that? I mean, do we do it elsewhere? Do we have guidelines in place that say we have to have a marker every so many feet saying it's conservation area, or
no?
No,
we don't have that. Are they looking for signs that say private property?
No, the opposite. They're looking for signs that say that it's town property.
No, there's no reason for us to put, other than the sign. I guess we could put a sign out by the road, but that would probably be the extent of it. Why don't we put a? How if we put a sign like right at the property boundary,
like right at where the stake is?
Yeah, just say conservation land.
Where else have we ever done that?
We don't have to, but I'm saying it's a different situation. You have a neighbor that is concerned.
You might as well make 100 of them then, because everybody's going to come in wanting signs next to their private property. But it seems like a weird precedent to start setting. Yeah.
If that satisfies, it's a simple thing. If that satisfies,
I agree with Kyle though that you're setting a precedence. So,
and that's kind of where I was going with it. And
I would withhold adding much more signage. Okay, Tim, next one.
Yep. Moving on to the next one. Reconsider development and public use of this parcel, such as a path trail off Great Road through these parcels. So what they're talking about is redeveloping this parcel to have an access. I don't know whether it's a defined trail through here, connecting to the like informal trail right here. To me, that really doesn't make a lot of sense since we have the main parking area right here. I'm not sure who would
you said there's people that do that though.
They only
not coming off of Great Road though.
Over here, yeah, not off of Great. But
right, I wouldn't want to put anything else on Great Road just from a safety standpoint.
Yeah, in the complaint, what they're looking for is such as a path trail off Great Road through, so like coming in through here.
Yeah, no, then yeah.
But you have the entrance right here with all the parking. I'm not sure.
Yeah, that doesn't make sense because then you're having people walking along Great Road. I don't know. It seems dangerous.
Is there even a sidewalk there?
No. Oh yeah, there is a sidewalk.
Is there
on that side?
I think there is, isn't there?
I don't think so. I don't think so.
Believe so.
Oh, maybe not.
Next one, Tim.
That was it for the 5 requests.
Okay.
And those aren't requests to us. This was, or are they through us, or they sent this to town council?
They sent this to the town administrator.
The administrator. So, do we know if the administrator is responding to this?
So I spoke with Jim before last meeting when this got discussed, and what he was looking for was just a formal response from the commission to these to this complaint and the requests.
Okay.
So I'm more than happy to draft something with Michael. More extensive than just saying,
I honestly think it can be bullet points. I don't think anything response doesn't have to be extensive. I think it can be concise and just comments in 1 or 2 sentences for each.
Okay. Would you like to, I can work with Michael and draft this, and would you guys like the final approval at the following meeting? Or just
I would have Lauren look at it.
Okay.
Happy to do that.
Yep. Thank you for helping, Michael.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So, commissioners, that was only my opinion. If any of you would like to see that draft, just let Tim know. Okay. Okay, let's see. Weed Warrior event is July 12th.
That was just to let you guys know that, it's tentative at this point because I don't think we've had anybody register. So if nobody's registering, it's not going to happen. But as of now, we have an event set for this Saturday at 9 a.m.
It might be a little too warm for some people.
Yeah, I tried to do it in the morning, just to try to avoid the heat. But
and then Littleton volunteer group emergency overflow for triathlon.
Yep. So Alex McCurdy actually came in today to ask about this. So he's with the Littleton Volunteer Corps, and they were wondering about emergency overflow parking for the Appleman Triathlon on July 20th. And I figured it would be best to run it by you guys, whether or not this would constitute a land use permit. But come to find out, it's on July 20th, the triathlon, and our next meeting isn't until the 22nd. So even if it did require a land use permit, they wouldn't have time to submit one for that. He said that there would be a maximum of 15 cars that would be in the parking lot.
I think that parking lot can handle that many.
Yeah, I'd say at least 7. At least
Yeah, 15
like
sounds like a lot.
7 on the gravel area, and then I've
Yeah.
seen parking on the grass area to the right if you're driving
But the
in.
grass area's already been mowed and hayed for the season, correct?
I can't confirm.
I assume so. Everybody else has
That
done
would be
theirs.
the
So.
only concern I have. If it hasn't been
It will have been by then.
mowed, then I would say there's not enough for 15 cars. But if it has been, I think, I mean, because there's been different times when we've had, it's been really wet or flooding. Calvin's been great about working with that and having parking up a little bit as well as you pull in to the right.
For approximately how long will the cars be parked there?
That I do not know. Lauren, do you know?
Half a day?
Yeah, he said it starts in the morning. They would be out by noon-ish.
Okay.
So maybe it's just temporary. Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Right.
I guess I don't have a problem with it.
Okay. Is that, you don't obviously need a vote or anything from us, Tim, do you?
No.
Okay. Tim, I think that was it for administrative discussions.
Yep.
Site walk for 0 Fort Pond. Any way that we can do that either right before or right after King Street?
That's Monday at noon.
Right. Kyle, do you think you'd have a few? I know it's across town though, kind of.
Yeah, looks like I could make that work. Looking at my calendar.
Okay.
Sarah, if I'm scheduled not to be there Monday, but if I'm back, I will attend.
Okay. Yep. So we're going to start at King Street, and perhaps Lauren or Tim could just send out a little reminder about that.
Yep. So you want to
that way Ed would know and Chase would know and Andrew would know. Although Andrew's not going to be back, I don't think.
Do we want to put a time on it to let
Yep. So well. So if
1
that's
o'clock.
noon, it would be probably a little bit before 1.
Yeah, so maybe like call it 12:45.
Yeah, say that we would be there between 12:45 and 1-ish.
Okay.
Okay. Great. It is 9:55. Anyone like to make a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion.
Or we could stay on.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I second that.
Kyle Maxfield,
Kyle Maxfield, bye.
Sarah Seward,
Sarah Seward, aye.
Michael Livingston,
Michael Livingston, aye.
and Carl Melberg, aye.
Good night, everyone. See some of you on
All right,
Monday.
Thank you.
Good